Hello, guys. Can you hear me? Hello, guys. Welcome to Timber Falls. I think we are finally live. Yep. Okay, great. Awesome. Hey, Brian. Hey, Richard. Hey, Jim. Sandman Dave. Welcome. Welcome to the live stream. Get this where I can see my chat. Bear with me for a second, guys, while we just get this set up. Let me know if everything is coming through, if you're having any issues. Seems to be buffering on my phone. Coming through just fine. Thanks, Jim. Good deal. Good deal. Awesome. Hey, Lynn. Sounds great. Well, guys, we're going to be doing 3D modeling today. I'm going to be demonstrating some of the things that I've been learning. I'm using Carveco, the full version. Let me change this stream. Okay, and hopefully you guys can see my screen and everything is coming through. I've got the full version of Carveco pulled up. I'm going to make this little screen down here at the bottom bigger. So hopefully you guys can see me. Everything's looking good. I don't have any reception on my phone. Okay, here we go. Okay, guys. Just getting started here. Just want to make sure. Still trying to check this stream. This is the first time that I've done this through Zoom, so it's sort of new. Usually I was using OBS in the beginning to do all of my streaming with. I learned how to use Zoom. I've got a commercial version of Zoom that I do all of my classes with. This is the Zoom broadcasting software that I record all of my classes because I do Maker and Maker Plus classes. And this is normally how I do it through this. So this way I can talk, you guys can see me, and we can work on the stuff here on the screen. We're going to be learning about doing 3D modeling. Now, I have the full version of Carveco, but kind of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is going to be applicable to all three versions. I first want to start it off by talking about the different ways to get a design into Carveco, the best ways to formulate that design, a few tricks to shortcut the design ahead of time, and then finally, the actual 3D modeling. 3D modeling is something that you don't seem to find a whole lot about online. And so that really the main drive of my channel, these live streams, the classes that I do, and pretty soon we're going to be announcing a new Carveco school that I've been developing. It's a video school that has all these different steps that you go through A to B, and it teaches you all the steps, step by step, on how to achieve different projects and different levels of 3D design. Um, I've been doing some consulting work for a few different companies doing 3D design. So this sort of fits right into the education and teaching that I've been doing. And I could kind of show you guys some of the stuff that I've been working with, some of the things, shortcuts that I've learned, and we can kind of just go from there. If anybody has any questions about anything as we go along, feel free to shoot those down in the chat there and I'll try and catch them. Um, if you have anything that's a subject matter that you'd like to see, something that you've been wondering about how it works, if you'd like for me to show the differences between Carveco and Carveco Maker Plus, I can show you some of the differences that the two different versions have. Excuse me. Carveco Maker Plus has the majority of these 3D modeling tools, but the full Carveco definitely has a lot more. The basic version of Carveco, I'm also going to show you in the beginning a few tick trips and tips and tricks on how to use the basic version of Carveco to also create 3D models because the beginning of this, it's all sort of the same method to get there. Now, recently, I have been using a lot of ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has been a really great tool to making designs, vectorization, and creating cleaned up versions of other people's uh, graphic designs. A lot of times we'll get clients who will send in photographs of things, pictures of things that are not real clear. They'll send me all kinds of stuff, logos. And a lot of times when it comes in, it's not very clean. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some of the things that I've found with ChatGPT. Now I'm using ChatGPT. There is a free version of this. I am using the pro version or the paid version. Basically, that just gives me more opportunities to use the software. I believe the difference in the free version and the full version is how many times you can use it per day or how many answers you can get back. So if you pay the base first pays base version is like I want to say it's like $20 a month, and then you get a fair amount of uses out of it. You also could use Bing, the AI there, Grok. I've actually used that one on X. So all these AIs, these generative models, they sort of work the same way. I would tell you that ChatGPT, in its most recent update, has probably the best of all of these. I'm going to go through a couple of different of the prompts that I use for ChatGPT. I actually have these saved on my desktop in a document file. And at the end of this stream, I will put all of these on the description of this video. But for now, I've created, there's three prompts. I have a prompt for creating vectors. If I'm going to do a vector design where I need either a clean vector drawing of something or clean vector artwork, I have a prompt that I use for just vectoring. Then I have two prompts for the 3D model creation. And what we're going to basically do is it's the same technique that many of the laser engraving guys are using with a bitmap or I'm sorry, with a height map or a depth map along with a textured file. So a lot of the laser engraving guys that are doing these coins and stuff, they're generating a depth map or a height map that generates the overall structure of the 3D model. And then they overlay that with a texture that is going to be the top of that 3D model. So this is sort of a cheap step to get to a 3D model using ChatGPT. The first one is For SVG, a bold black and white vector style line drawing of, I have subject. Designed for CNC carving, the image should be high contrast with clean, distinct lines, no shading or gradients, emphasizing strong silhouettes, clear separation between the features, minimal interior design to suit relief carving or V-carve toolpaths. By entering these, telling ChatGPT what we're going to be using it for, it sort of helps it produce a better picture. So we're going to copy that. I'm just going to jump back over here to ChatGPT and just drop that into my chat window here. We do need a subject matter. Uh, Real quick, hey Mark, see that you just jumped in, Mark Myers. Any of you guys have a subject matter that you'd like to see me demonstrate? Something that you see all the time online that you would like for me to throw together real quick. Has anybody got anything that they're interested in seeing? I'll take the first suggestion. Anybody? Do a human ear. So, funny thing. Animals, humans, and scenery are the three hardest things to create. We could try doing a human ear, an owl. Owls are a decent subject matter for this. Um, I'm going to show you this method of 3D model creation, and then I'm going to show you the traditional way of 3D model creation, where you use vectors. If I were going to do that ear, I probably would do that traditionally with regular vectors because there's so much curvature and you've got a lot of folds and turns, and you really need a more traditional method. Whereas this method that I'm fixing to show you is more for like shortcutting yourself to a 3D model in just a few minutes so that we're not spending hours upon hours generating 3D models or having to create 3D models. This first method that I'm going to show you is sort of the shortcut to get you there. And once you get there, then you can use more traditional methods to take what we're fixing to make and create something that is a little bit more useful for um, for modeling. Okay, so let's try let's see what we got. Oh, the reason you asked, you've done one recently, done in an hour. Right on. Uh, Homer, if you had the a if you have a reference picture, one of the things I was going to say about this is that depending on the quality of your reference picture makes these 3D modeling either easy or hard. If you have a hard or if you have a reference model that's pixelated and stuff, this particular method we're going to use is not very good for that. Um, So a bold black vector white drawing of I'm just going to do human ear. Let's just see what it says, just to see what happens here. Now, this one is actually for the vector design. This wasn't the 3D design. Um, so I'm going to throw this one in here. Then I'm going to grab the one for the 3D design and see what we get out of that. Yeah, for hits and giggles. Right on. Let me grab this other prompt, and I'll show you the difference of what it makes. This says a high contrast black and white bas relief style image of subject with intense overhead lighting to create bright highlights and raised surfaces and deep shadows in recessed areas. The difference between these two methods or the two prompts is one of them is using shadows for the method, and then the other one um, is using vectors to create this method. So this is the SVG, or if I was going to do vector graphics, you could see that this created a nice little ear that we could simply vectorize and then create a V-carve toolpath. So this first prompt was basically for making your 2D design or your 2D stuff. Sandman Day says, I need to make a 3D chicken. All pre-made models. Let's see. I found are roosters, pictures of the chicken. It didn't turn out well at all. Yeah, chickens. Um, we can try that too. Let's do the other model, and I'm going to use the same subject. We're going to do human ear. I'll jump back in and we'll go through each one of these. Human ear. Line weight too heavy. Yeah, so this initial prompt is really just to kind of sort of get you there. These prompts, they're like really good for creating, what you're looking for. This is more of the height map of for the importing. So we've got two different ones. We've got this one and we've got this one. Let's just go ahead and take this one and we'll save this one real quick. Okay, and let's go back. And then I'm going to show you, we're going to get a height map for that. Use the attach image, convert it to a height map, ensure that the subject is isolated with no background. Bright areas should be interpreted as raised, dark areas should be recessed. The height map will be used to generate a ready a CNC ready STL base relief model. Again, I'm going to put all these prompts in the description at the end. Let's go back to here. Um, we're going to attach that photo of the ear that we just got, and we're going to ask it to make a height map for it. Mm. And just bear me with me, guys, while ChatGPT is doing its little thing. Um, we're going to just download that. We'll save that. Okay, and if we jump back over into Carveco, that basically, and this is the same for Carveco Maker, Maker Plus, or full version. You would use the same method. And basically, we go up here to Relief, Import, and we're just going to click the Import button. Navigate to that file, and let's see, the height map is this one here. Now, it doesn't look a whole lot different from the other photo. And this is something that you sometimes you have to play around with ChatGPT. And I can tell that it's probably not going to come in like this just because of the way that let's try that other picture. Let's cancel this, or let's delete it actually. Relief, import. Let's just try the picture. Okay. So basically what we can do over here is we can change this to our material size. We will recenter it with F9. And I don't know why my 3D view, there's something else. Okay, there we go. Let's just make this the right size. And for height, we're going to leave it at that 0.97. We'll just paste that down. We'll hit it with some smoothing around 30 or 40%. And at this point, you also could use your shape tools for this. Now, depending on if it's all going the correct direction, you may have to reverse that height map to get the darker parts on the inside. So if this were going the wrong way and the ear parts were not sticking out proud, if they were sunk down instead, you basically could use your reverse height map. You would just go back to ChatGPT and ask it to do a reverse height map. Okay, and then now that we have the basic form of the ear, we could use our smoothing tools to smooth this out, and then our sculpting tools to give this shape. Now, um, in Maker Plus and in the full version Carveco, we have pretty much all the tools that we're going to need. The smoothing tool. The smoothing tool works on this sort of this little dot here. That's the radius. The bigger the radius that I make, the bigger that dot gets. And then with the smoothing tool, the strength of it is also has a lot to do um, with the resolution that the entire project is put into. Now, in Carveco Maker and Maker Plus, you can get all the way up to a 4K resolution or a 4,000 by 4,000 pixel count. In full version of Carveco, we can get double that. We can get double the amount of pixels. Now, depending on where your resolution is, actually affects the strength and smoothness of the tool. At 4,000 or 4K resolution, the tool works harder than at 8,000 resolution. I have found that all of my carving tools, when I start cranking the resolution up, these carving tools become less impactful. In other words, you have to use stronger strengths. Whereas in if I were doing this in just basic Maker Plus at 4K resolution, I actually could lower these strengths down and get the same effect as this at a stronger strength at 8K resolution. I think it has a lot to do with how fast the processor can process all of those pixels and designs and stuff. But there is a difference in how these tools operate depending on the resolution that you're using for this project. So that does play a part. Now this definitely looks pretty pixelated. So I mean, I probably would sit over here actually and do some more generalized smoothing, then come back in and build this back up. So once we had our basic shape, we could go back to our molding tools and we can go to our this one is the deposit tool. This is the carve tool, the smudge tool. Now, the smudge tool and the transfer tool are only available in full Carveco. But the smoothing tool, the deposit tool, and the carve tool, the erase tool, all of those are available in Maker Plus. So basically what I would do to finish forming this out is I would get my radius about the size of whatever it is I want to change. So this is about the size of this. We would want to start at one end and then just work our way around the ear. So if have a radius here, and let's put this at 2%, which is very small. I have a smoothness of 100, and I'm not going to change any of this stuff down here. Now, the shape dynamics, this is only available in full Carveco. Um, yeah, 2000 by 2000, 4 million pixels. That's 4K resolution in the Maker and Maker Plus. We're 8K resolution or 4000 by 4000 pixels or million. 4000 by 4000. Yeah, I think it's million. Is it million or thousand? Richard? Sorry. Anyway, uh the behavior, we have a limit in a stamp behavior. Right now we're just going to be using normal. And the snapping mode, this is also a full version. In Maker and Maker Plus, you do not have this option, but in the full version, you have the ability to snap to vectors. And you can snap to a selected vector or you can snap to all vectors. And basically, what that means is if I had a vector that was going along, say, the center of this, I could use that vector to hold my mouse perfectly still and then add. So as I add this in, I'm just going to move my mouse around here. Now you can see that it almost barely adds any height. If I turn it to the side, you can actually see a little better of what we're actually doing. But we're actually just adding or pulling this in. And like I said, using ChatGPT and getting the basic structure and the format saves a ton of time. So by importing this the way I did for this ear and then coming back, and then now I'm going to use my tools to create the correct shapes that we want to give it. And this will allow us to create this 3D model. And depending on how much work that you actually want to spend on it, um, and how quickly that the molding's going. So if you want this to go a little faster, but you want to get a little more loose with it, you can do the molding like this, and then this will start to build this out. And so this is the first technique of basically how you can create 3D models of just about anything using ChatGPT and then some of the molding tools. Now, if I wanted to isolate this ear by itself, normally what I would do is come up here and grab uh, let's see, we have our molding tools. No, we don't. I lost my project window. Okay, there we go. Um, I would just take a vector and outline it and then cut this out. So we could quickly create a vector outline of the ear going along here, like so. We just come along. Now I'm going really fast. If I were doing this, I would take my time and make it look much better. But then we could just zero outside of vector, and now we have our ear. Now that was a short and simple, a short and quick. Uh, could have very well took some time to mold this out and shape it, use my carving tools to carve this down inside of here. But you could see that we very quickly put this together. It didn't take but just a few minutes. Um, and this method, this shortcut method, really works. Um, it really helps to bring your designs in very quickly. let's go back to ChatGPT and let's try one of those other examples. Um, let's go back here. Let's grab this one, copy, go back to here. Oop, and let's put our prompt back in. And let's try an owl. I'll just put owl. Oh no, wait. Let's do we'll let it go. We'll do the owl. So Richard, I always thought that Carveco Maker and Carveco Maker Plus was half of the resolution, and that basically full Carveco doubled the resolution to 8K. I see you're saying 4 million and then 64 million. Now, again, if there's something in these pictures that you don't like, say it wasn't detailed enough, or you didn't, it just doesn't look like the type of owl that you want, you could go back into this prompt and change where I have subject. You literally could say, hey, this is going to be, need this more detailed. I need it more lifelike. There's several little descriptive words that you can add in here that will then change that prompt. Um, this one's not bad. Let's uh let's save this image. Um, let's see. Uh, can you give me a darker version of this? Okay. Now we're waiting on the Chat GPT, the darker version. Let's go back here. Relief, import. No, it didn't give me a dark version. ChatGPT is still a work in progress. I would tell you that it's sometimes it does what you want it to do, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why we're having. Let me reset my. There we go. Okay. Let's go back to 20 by 20. F9 to center it. Draw it out. Again, we're just shortcutting to get to some of the features. And this is one of the methods that I wanted to show you. We're basically shortcutting the creation of all the details. And then we're basically just going in here, smoothing this out and adding back in using our tools some of the details. This is um, this method is really good when you're not trying to do lifelike things. I would tell you that animals, people, and scenery is like by far the hardest because it always comes out pixelated and textured. Whereas if you're doing this with like logos or names or anything like that, words or something that's more basic, this stuff works perfectly for that. Um, and then this is a method of creating 3D models. Okay. Let's start a new model. By the way, I am using 4K by 4K. I do not have the resolution cranked up. One of the main reasons is it slows everything down. If I run it in 8K by 8K, it generally takes me 15 to 20% longer to do my 3D modeling at that high resolution. So what I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of the model building at a low resolution. And then if there's something at the very, very end that I want to crank it up for, I can always go up here to model, adjust resolution, and then crank that resolution back up. And it will take whatever I have created and add the resolution back to it. Sometimes after that, you have to then sort of take your model and sort of remold it or reform it a little bit because it will change the dynamics of it ever so slightly. But for the most part, it looks just almost identically the same. Um, and that method that I just showed you guys with the Chat GPT bringing in a height map or a base map. Let me see if I can find one that I've recently did that would be more of a demonstration. Um, so I had somebody send me this picture and they wanted me to see if I could make this into a 3D model. So I tried a couple of things to get it clear. Eventually, I just asked ChatGPT to remake the model, and it gave me this. And then using that, I created basically this height map or depth map, and then this as the texture. So the way that worked was um, go to relief, import again, bring in the one that was the height map. Let's see. Bu- 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 where is it? Okay, here it is. 20 by 20. We did not have this at full 0.75. F9 to center it. This is the way it came in. Let's make it 24 by 24. Paste it down. Relief, import. 24 by 24. We're going to change this to 0.05 because we just want to texture it and we're going to put add. So we're adding this photo on top of this photo. Did I not F9 it? Oh, uh, F9. And then that added in texture, some of my texture. Now it was misaligned. So if we back that up and we take this blue that was underneath here, go back to the transform tool. Let's make it like 1 inch for now, just so you can see. We can take this and align it with our other picture, like so. And then when we change this back to 0.05, apply and paste it down, now it will be lined up. And so this is a different type of adding texture to a bitmap. This is very similar to the way the laser graving and guys are doing these coins. They're using a height bitmap, importing that to get the overall structure of the image. And then we're using the texture or the file with the texture to overlay it. And then that gives us all of that texture on our model. Now we go back and now it's a traditional 3D carve where we're basically coming back in here and using our molding tools to add in all the different parts. So at this point, I would start basically working my way around this picture and changing the height and depth, fixing all of the different little parts that were up and down for that. And then when it was finished, let's see, documents, Carveco, projects. When it was finished, we had gone in and corrected a bunch of different things. So we'd corrected the hair, we'd added texture to the back of this. I changed out the rim. I added all of the depth to all of the spikes. We shaped the head. We shaped this. We use vectors inside of this little cutout here to get rid of all of that area that was raised up there. We changed the hands and added the cross in. And then this came out really nice. And this was using the same method as that import style method. Now, let me show you the other way. Let's see if I can get down to something. Now, this is going to be the other way to do 3D modeling. And when I first started with this particular model, we got in this picture from a client. And let's see. Go back to my 3D view here. Let's turn off the vectors. So basically, this was a photograph that we vectorized. Um, and in this particular, a lot of times when I need to vectorize a photograph like this, especially like this one that was a barn and it had a lot of wood tiles and things, I actually hired this out. I sent this picture to one of the Vectric, one of the vector guys um, that they're always online talking about creating vectors. I think I paid 15 or 20 bucks to have this vectorized. Usually those guys are really inexpensive for doing that. But what they give you is a vectorized picture. And if I were to turn off um, the relief layer, you can see that we had basically created a vector of this entire drawing. And then basically from here, what we did is we went back in and added using the shape editor, we created the 3D relief. And each one of these is basically using the shape editor. So this is the second method to creating 3D models is using vectors to shape create. And I can kind of show you how that works. What we can do here is we can get rid of this uh, reset relief. So we've gotten rid of the entire relief. And if we were going to do this from scratch, we would want to basically, and I'm going to show you like on this windmill here, I would go around and find all the components that I want to create a 3D portion of, which is right now would be all the blades. Let's see if we can hit them pretty fast here. Okay, then I would open up my shape editor, which is available in both Carveco Maker Plus and the full version of Carveco. And you can pick different shapes. So we had round, we could have made that. We could have just raised it up by using a start height and given it a plane. Oop, not 10 inches, 0.10. Or we could do a square. Now, one of the things I like to do is using the square, we do this limit the height. And then we give the limited height, let's get rid of this base height. We give the limited height, let's use 0.125. And what that means is that as the center of this starts to raise up, when it gets to 0.125, it's going to flatten out. So the wall, the side wall here is 0.125 tall. Whatever I make this height right here is what it's going to be. So if I go to zero point 0.1, now that sidewall is 0.1. I could do 0.05, now it's 0.05. And that's because the flat part starts at 0.05. So this is a good way to create angled boards or boards that have a chamfer off of them. And that looks really good for that. So that's what we did. We did that. I think we did the tail very similar. Um, and then all the components. And then like the same thing with the rest of this. Um, Using the shape editor, and if we turn off our vectors, we can kind of see what we're doing here. We could go back in and add these components back in. And a lot of times by just highlighting all of the vectors that you're going to be working with, you can kind of see by selecting either round or square what the overall profile is going to be. Richard says 20-inch square at 4K gives 0.005 per pixel. Upside down V carve with a flat depth. Ah, I see. Okay. Cool. That's good to know. Thanks for that info, Richard. That's I did not I didn't I knew that it was like uh I knew how the pixels like it was counting them, but I wasn't sure about per pixel, like the distance. But that makes sense. So going back to this, um, so we could create now this looks already high because it's got a start height of 0.125. Now those blades, I did not have a start point of 125, but that's had I gone back in there, that's exactly what we could have done. And then there may be things that we actually just needed to fill. So let's say we wanted to fill this part up and make it solid rather than so we could do the 0.125. And now we're creating a solid, let's turn this off. You can see this. A solid center to those components. All these components can be basically you could go back in and change them and add as much on it as you would want. And that's basically how we start forming the entire um, the entire picture. Same thing with the slats in the barn here. If I turn off my vectors, you can see you can very quickly create your 3D model. Um, let's go here. If I go to square, Oh, and I probably have these outlined. Yeah. Anyway, what I like to do though is highlight the whole thing to see what is going to be affected and what is not going to be affected. And then that allows me to go back in there, select the very specific vectors that we want to affect for creating the 3D models. So that's how that works. It basically allows us to select exactly what we want. And usually it's like it alternates. So this vector method using vectors and basically the shape editor or the other molding tools is the second method to creating 3D relief models. So the first method that we showed was using an import style where you're importing an image and you're using that image as your base height. And then you're also using that image as a texture. And then in this type of relief, we are using vectors and a shape editor to create all of our 3D models. And then the third and final sort of method is to combine both of these methods. And that's to use vectors to not only create shapes, but also to use a photograph to create the texture afterwards. So even though we created all of this 3D model, we could then come back and take the photograph, the original photograph, and import that as a texture. And then when we paste that on top of our 3D model, it will texturize the 3D model in the way that the photograph looks. And that's how you add all of those lifelike textures back on top. And I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Um, if let's close this model and not save. Let's see, we got to close this. Let's open that back up. So we have our picture here in the background, and our tractor here. Okay, so now if we import this picture, let's go to relief, import, and I would have to find this tractor picture again um, to import it. Let's see if I can bitmap. Um, if I remember correctly, there is a way to export the picture. Exporting the picture. Is it print? Um, I don't remember how to export this picture. I would have to just find it again. Let me let me see if I can find it real quick on my computer. Let's see. I think I know where this is. It's leaf import. I think it's in downloads. Bear with me 1 second, guys. I'll get this picture imported here. Pretty sure it's right here. Yep, right there. Okay, let's go to our size of 20 by 20, F9. Okay, and then basically I'm going to have to move the picture around to align it, like so. Uh, all right, and then we set our height over here to 0.05 because we just really want it to be a texture. And we're on add, so we're adding that to add that. And of course, our picture didn't go all the way to the right, so we sort of missed that. And if we turn off our vectors, we have added that texture, the picture as a texture. Now, depending on the picture, what you're trying to texture, you may have to move this around to get it to line up exactly. Since we did draw all the vectors from the photograph, I know that it does align. So you can get that lined up. But this is just a quick way to come back and texturize or texture your 3D model using the original picture that you were using as a reference from the very beginning. The other way to do that would be to use the texture tool. If you go up here to your texture tool, you can select from a file and upload the same picture. The difference in doing it this way versus this way that I just showed you is that the method that I showed you, you actually can take the blue and align it and move it around, whereas the texture tool doesn't really have that function. So it's a little harder to get it to align. Now, if the photograph and what you're modeling align already, then you can use this texture tool. A lot of times, I will use the texture tool because you can use a selected vector. So if you have selected vector selected, the texture tool will only texture what vector is selected. So in this method, if I let's say I just had the barn wood selected. So I may have this open area selected and this selected and this selected with my selected vector. And then when I add my texture in from my photograph, it will only texture the wooden boards. So it'll only texture what's inside of those vectors. This is another shortcut or quick way to add a texture to your 3D model by using the photograph that you are using as a reference from the very beginning. So that is the other method to 3D modeling. Guys, is there any questions about what we're going over? Is there anything else that you guys had questions about? I was going to sort of go through all the different tools. I have a video coming out real soon on the molding tools. Um, I'm going to be doing some videos on full Carveco and some of the features that are available in full Carveco that are not available in Maker Plus or Maker. So there's a few things, that we can do in the full version that we could not do in Maker Plus or, especially Basic Maker. Um, in the project bitmaps, right click on selected one and export. Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, I knew there was a way to do that. Okay, okay. Awesome. I knew there was a way to export it. Thanks. So yeah, we could just title this Barn one. And then I already know it lines up. So what we can do is go up here to our texture tool from file, select that, go to the barn one. It's now loaded up as a texture, selected vector, and let's pick something that will texture. Let's see, something you guys can see. Uh, I'm sure it'll add it right on top of this, so we should be able to see it. Especially at 0.6. We'll just make it 0.125 so you can see the effect. Let me undo it so you can see the difference. So we just took the barn, the wood texture. Now it did add quite a bit of depth. It added a quarter inch. I mean, an eighth of an inch. But the same method, you could do pretty much all of this. Whatever the selected vector is from file, and we're just taking what was in the file and transferring it to the 3D model. And because I'm using selected vector, it only affects what's inside of the vector. Did you say the verbiage to use in ChatGPT would be posted after the video? That's correct, Dave. I'm gonna put all three of those the different things that I use in ChatGPT. I'm gonna post it in the description of this video when we get done. Um, there's one, let me go back to ChatGPT because there is one thing I wanted to show you guys. I'm going to have a video. I have a video I've already created on ChatGPT. I just haven't released it yet, but I do have this video where I'm going to show how to fix clients, um, how to fix like really bad stuff. Let me see if I can sort of give that to you. Let's see, add photo. Let me find something that's really bad. Okay, we'll go with this one. So I've done this one already, so I kind of know. The thing that you want to ask Chat GPT is you want to say, can you generate a photo recreation of this image? I do not want a trace of the image, but a line drawn reproduction of it. It's important to say that you don't want the image traced because ChatGPT has a trace image function. And given that you just tell it to do something, that's its go-to method is the trace function. It has a different function, using the word recreate, um, or recreation, takes it to a different type of prompt. It goes from trying to trace and replicate what you have into giving its own stylized version of what it is that you're basically looking for. In the sign industry, bad artwork is referred to as nephew art. Sandman Dave says this is nephew art. Now, sometimes you do have to sit here and talk with ChatGPT and tell it what you do and don't like about what it made. So the first rendition of the recreation may not be exactly what you want, but generally, if you talk through with ChatGPT, it will give you a pretty decent rendition or recreation of your image, and it's been really good. I mean, excuse me, to get what we have right now, even with the two images that it just produced. I mean, yeah, there's some things about it that that you may have to fix. There's a lot of texture in here that's added. It generally creates two versions. So this version looks probably more usable. So we could take this version here and save this image. And then basically we come back, let's create a new file, new model, or model, relief import, 20 by 13. Let's F9 to center that. Then we take the circle. It looks more oval than circle. And then this has the fingers coming out of the frame, whereas I think in our original it was inside the frame. So you may want to have to adjust for that. But basically, we could use this strong image outline to start building a 3D model, using the basic standard techniques for each one of the tools. Um, like this circle here, we could go to extrude. This will be our drive rail. And then we just need a little semi with legs, like so. And then you click here, extrude, use this as your start profile. And you could create you a new, this is how I started off with creating a new ring to go around the picture here. Of course, you could use all of your insert nodes and make this, perfect, however that you needed to. But this is sort of the same basic concept to creating another 3D model. We start with a design, we create the artwork, we generalize the artwork, and then we just build the features from there. So, this would take a little while of going and outlining all of the different parts, outlining the face. I would outline the face and the jawbone, probably outline the hairline, outline the crown, outline the hand, outline the circle. outline the cross, outline the inner parts of this back circle. So all that stuff would be vectorized. Any places that I might need to do shapes where, like if I want to recess this eye where it's flat in this picture, I would take and create a vector in the shape of the eye. And honestly, this just takes some like playing around with to make it look right. I mean, you guys have to just sort of experiment with the shapes. But then you can use your shape editor. We could do a subtract on a round, make the eye socket. We use our smoothing tool, blend it out. I mean, it doesn't take long. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, you can move through it pretty quickly and it works all pretty good. But you could get through all this stuff pretty quickly. Just a little smoothing, and then you would start adding your features and depth. You may want to come back and add the top of the eyelid. So we come back, we hit a deposit. We're going to blow that up a little bit and add that in. So now that we have sort of an eye. Um, this is very fast, very crude. I'm not taking any time to do this. I'm really just trying to demonstrate the method in which I'm using to create these 3D models. So this is the general idea or method, the thought process behind generating these 3D models. So you start with a base, a design, you create your structure, and then you add your features. I think using ChatGPT and AI to shortcut these processes to give you an overall design from the beginning has really made things come along really quickly. And the future is bright. Uh, Carveco is diligently working to improve this process all the time. And so, there's going to be new things that come out that are going to really help this along the way. The more this AI stuff gets better and better, the better that ChatGPT is about delivering the photograph the way you want it to see it, the way that Carveco interprets that information. All of this seems to be getting better. Just even in the last, say, 2 years, it's really just come a long ways from the old methods of where you basically start with a picture and mold everything. Um, all of the different tools in the software, I will have a video covering every single tool. So if it's a tool to be molded, carved with, at not all of the full Carveco tools are on the channel yet, but I do have videos planned where I plan to go through each one of the tools and show you how to basically to master that tool. Um, Today was a general overview of the 3D creation process. I just wanted to go through this with you guys to show you like the method that you would use to start creating this stuff. Um, are there any questions or anything that you guys were interested in that you really want to see and haven't seen anybody cover? I'm always looking for content ideas. So if there's something like content wise that you guys would like to see or haven't seen, if there's a particular tool or, process that you don't understand, if there's something, very in particular, um, one of the things I think that is super powerful about Carveco that's not in Maker Plus is this two rail sweep. I think the two rail sweep is like the last bastion of tools that need to come from Carveco to Carveco Maker Plus. If they would move the two rail sweep from Carveco to Carveco Maker Plus, Carveco Maker Plus would be almost all you would ever need. Having done this sort of in the more professional realm and having updated to the full version Carveco, yes, there's definitely tools and stuff in the full version that make life a whole lot simpler, with some of the more powerful molding and sculpting tools and some of the little shortcuts. But the two rail sweep is exactly like, the tool that needs to be added. And the way the two rail sweep works is you have two rails or two things that are, sort of close or identical to each other. Um, and that's the two rails you're going to create the shape in between, and then you have a series of drive rails, and the drive rails can be multiple shaped. They can have a couple of different shapes. um I'll show you this real quick. Let's go to node editing. Let's cut this here. Cut, cut, and we'll get rid of this so that we have basically just this L, this. So two rail sweep, you have drive rails, the two rail sweep, the extrude tool, um, several of these tools that, uh, let's see, I believe the spin tool, well, the extrude tool and two rail sweep work similarly. There's a drive rail, the rails that the effect happens on. So we have the two drive rails, and then we have cross section. The cross section is the shape that we're going to generate between these two lines. Now, there is a direction. You can see this arrow or this direction. Depending on what direction you have your cross section going, if it's going the opposite way, it will do a crisscross of that shape. But if they're going in the same direction, it will hold that shape across. Now, every time you add a cross section, let's add another cross section. The first two cross sections that you add generally start at the end. Notice how this cross section has a little 1 byte. This little cross section has a 2 byte. And it could show you that here's the 1, here's the 2. Let's click this and add another cross section. Now, that also changed this to 3. We moved the 2 to the middle, and now the 3 is at the end. You can change around the positions of these cross sections. These little white dots also allow you to move the position of that cross section and where it takes place. So the two rail sweep in combination with all of this other stuff, this is by far your most powerful shaping tool because you can get some really crazy stuff. You can do some really crazy looking shapes with the two rail sweep. Um, it's also one of the most difficult tools to work with. There's a couple of different projects where I was trying to do arcing slopes that twisted at the end. Um, and it took me hours of playing around with it to get that actual shape. So this tool is not one of the easier. It's actually one of the more harder tools to use. When the drive rails, let's see, Richard says, when the drive rails are not parallel but get closer and farther, it still works. Yes. Yes. Yeah, even when they're almost right up against each other, you almost can do what even looks like almost like a closed loop. You can get it down to like right on top of each other, and it will still work. And then all of these nodes and stuff that also can be moved. So yes, you can change this and move this along with it. Super powerful tool. This is one that I'm still working on wrapping my head around the full capabilities of it. You know, it's like anything. You work with it enough times and you eventually start to get it. Um, but yeah, this one's one of the more complicated or difficult tools to use. But it can do some really neat designs. But it does work on open vectors and not closed vectors. So it only works on a an open vector. There are several tools that are in Carveco that work on open vectors. The spin tool, I'll show you this real quick because it's super easy. The spin tool basically from the very end to the other end creates this round shape, and then all of the deviations in between add to the spin or the shape of that spin. We also have the turn tool. The turn tool uses the closed or open vector as one side of a an item that's turned. And what's cool about the turn tool is you can create cylinders. This is a really good way to create a cylinder. I was making one of the projects that I recently had. We were making hinges. So to like a hinge that looks something like this and do the spin tool. And then of course, I had to make the hinge a little bit like this, a little bit longer. Well, it looked better when I did it the first time. I think it's because I have a curve up here. But anyway, I was making some hinges, and these are great ways to make a circular looking design. Let's see here. So, yeah. Oh, wait. No, let's do this. I realize I've got my material turned, so it looks it's I'm trying to draw straight and it's it's twisted. But anyway, um, this is a really cool, easy way to make rounded shapes. And you can do this, add, subtract, merge high, merge low on any type of relief. So if you wanted to add some sort of round feature onto your relief, this little turn tool is a great little tool for doing that. So that's sort of the tools that the turn tool, the spin tool, extrude, um, turn, all of those are in Maker Plus. The only tool is that's not there is this two rail sweep. The other tool that's not there is the 3D blend. I don't is it 3D blend or contour blend? It's one of these two, I believe, is not in Maker Plus. I would need to open Maker Plus up. The other big difference between Maker Plus and full Carveco is the layout. Um, you guys may have noticed that the layout is quite different. This bar is normally right here. Um, these tools are normally up here. There's a lot of these tools that are normally over here. This section of tools doesn't exist in Maker and Maker Plus. So the format of this software is a little different. So if you ever do upgrade to full Maker, or I'm sorry, full Carveco, you will have to get a little bit used to where all the buttons are. Although in the original ArtCam, this is the layout for ArtCam. So if you're an ArtCam user or were an ArtCam user, this may actually be more familiar to you, depending on what version of Carveco you were using. They also had an older version of Carveco that looks a lot like Maker and Maker Plus that had the two rail sweep in it. I think it was like Carveco. Uh, I'm not sure about the different versions. I just know that like 2018 ArtCam looks exactly like this. Um, hmm, what else? So guys, that was my little uh demonstration of 3D modeling with Carveco Maker Plus. Basically went over the basic how to, like the methodology behind creating 3D models and using ChatGPT, AI to sort of shortcut creating your models and stuff. What I would like to do is start having a regular modeling session to do these live streams and actually go through actual projects so that we start from finish, go through an entire 3D modeling project. So you can see all of the different things that you might run into along the way, as well as, showing you some of the tips and tricks to actually doing a full project. We would go from the start to finish. Generally, I think that depending on the subject matter, it'll take us an hour to an hour and a half to successfully create some kind of 3D model from scratch. And I'm going to plan on doing this at a pretty regular session so that we can, for those that want to learn how to do all of the 3D modeling and learn all the different techniques, they can tune in and check this out. Guys, if you have any questions or if you are seeing this late or recorded, uh, feel free to hit questions up in the comments down below. Make sure you subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, give us a like. That tells us we're doing okay. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing. We have great content that comes out every week. And if there's anything that you guys would like for me to cover or see, again, just shoot that in the description below. Well, I think that's probably going to do it today. Let's look and see here. Do we have any other questions? Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Guys, if there's anything else, have a great weekend. We'll be back at it next week, and I will see you on the next one, and we'll continue to make bit happen. Have a great one, guys. We'll see you on the next one.